God'll get you for that one.
Maude is owned by Shout Factory.
God'll Get You for That, Walter is produced for entertainment purposes only.
Sponsored in part by Finley's Friendly Appliances. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Episode 22.
Episode 22.
I guess
we are episode 22. Look at us go. Look at us go. High five.
I know. We were like, I was just realizing it today when we were getting ready to record.
And our Facebook page is almost at 1,000 likes, isn't it?
Is it?
I think so.
I hope so. And we recently just had
150 downloads on Buzzsprout. Look at us doing the thing.
I know.
Proud of you.
Who are we, by the way?
I have no idea who we are today.
Now that we've talked ourselves up, who the hell are we?
I am Tom Catt, and I am joined by the ever-lovely, the ever-delightful Toni Homeperm.
Tony with an I.
Toni with an I.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later. That's usually at the end of the show. I know, it's usually
at the end.
But it's so nice to introduce ourselves in the beginning.
It's so nice to introduce ourselves. Just to have a laugh.
And sing a song.
Yes.
So there was a couple of songs sung today.
A lot.
There were quite a few. In this episode.
It was a little bit of a musical episode.
This is episode 20, season 1 of Maude, which aired March 6, 1973, and it is entitled Maude's Good Deed.
And of course, as I commented, no good deed
goes unpunished.
And it certainly is the case in this episode.
So, the overarching theme of this is that Maude's friend Jane is up from Chicago.
Yes.
Visiting. And Maude is trying to set up Jane with Arthur. And
that was like... That alone. Well, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. That was interesting in and of itself.
That was interesting, to say the least.
The very least. And also, we have guest stars.
Yes.
We have guest stars. So, Jane is played by Rosemary Murphy, who we found out was in the movie Ben, was on episodes of Columbo, was on episodes of Magnum P.I.,
Frapper John,
Murder, She Wrote,
Law and Order. She was in the movie For the Boys.
Yes, with Bette Midler.
And she was also on Dr. Quinn, Medicine
She was also on Dr. Quinn,
Medicine
Medicine
Woman. A favorite show of your mother. Of your mother's.
Of my mother's. No, it's true. And also, hilariously enough, another show that my mother loved was One Life to Live. And the reason I mention that is because Lee Lawson, who played Linda, Jane's daughter, was on a number of soap operas of the day. She was on Kojak, One Life to Live, Guiding Light, what was it? Love of Life.
Love of Life.
So just a lot of soap operas Lee Lawson was on. And she is now, I think, a clinical psychologist in Los Angeles.
Wow.
That was what I found out, yeah.
Huh,
I don't know if she's retired or not, but that's what IMDb said.
Okay, well, good enough.
So we'll get to why Linda's invited to the party during the course of the show.
Soiree, as it were.
So Carol, we open on Carol reading the family album, looking over pictures of the family album.
Is that what she was? Is that what she was doing?
I think it was a family album. That's what they had said. I initially thought it was a yearbook because they were talking about Maude and Jane having pictures of having pictures of all that
from when they were young. Yes.
So my question is, why would you have pictures of a show? And also pictures of Jane's daughter in that was just very bizarre to me.
It was.
Just plot lines.
They had to work it all in.
Yes, they do. So we open on Carol doing that, and then Maude enters singing.
After the ball.
After the ball is over, Mary takes out her glass eye. I always wanted to know what the rest of that song was like, and I've looked it up a number of times.
You can't find it?
I can find it, and you know something? I'm going to right now.
All right.
I'm going to find it right now.
So this is...
after the ball. After the ball is over.
After the ball is over.
Mary takes out her glass eye. And, you know, very, very of the time, very, very of the time songs. Mary takes out her glass eye. So, After the Ball song on Wikipedia is a popular song written in 1891 by Charles K. Harris.
1891?
The song is a classic waltz in three-quarter time. In the song, an uncle tells his niece why he has never married. He saw his sweetheart kissing another man at a ball, and he refused to listen to her explanation. Many years later, after the woman had died, he discovered that the man was her brother.
tragic.
So tragic.
So, well, we have to assume that the lyrics Maude is singing are not the original lyrics.
Yes, they're not the original lyrics.
It must be one of those things, like a song parody. Where
yes.
You know.
The popularity of the song made it a natural for contemporary parody. A common version was, after the ball was over, after the break of morn, after the dancers leaving, after the stars are gone, many a heart is aching, if you could read them all, oh my God almighty.
Oh,
and then we get to the actual lyric, after the ball is over, Bonnie took out her glass eye, put her false teeth in the water, hung up her wig to dry. Placed her false arm on the table, laid her false leg on the chair.
Was she a drag queen?
I guess so.
I mean, all these things.
I have to assume she was a
taking
drag
off
queen.
all the parts.
After the party was over, Bonnie was only half there. So I mean, this was a very kitschy, catty song for the 70s, I suppose. I mean, it also reminds me of oh God, what was the name of the woman who did the 12 Drinks of Christmas?
Oh yes. I forget her name.
I forget her name, but I mean, she did the two Cutty Sarks and
Cutty Sarks.
and
three
old crows.
Yes,
3 old crows. 4. Oh my God, I had it memorized for a really long time.
I did that number actually.
I'm sure you did. It's a good drag number.
It's a great drag number because you're getting progressively drunker. As the
number goes on. I've actually wanted to perform that a few times.
It's a so fun song.
It's so fun.
It's a fun song to perform. It really is.
But like that was of the time to sing before Weird Al Yankovic entertained us with the parodies that he did.
Yes.
You would have standards like this, of course.
Yes.
So after that song, Jane enters. And then they also go into another song, and I have it written down.
Oh, How We Danced on the Night.
Oh, yeah, so How We Danced on the Night we danced and we danced because the room had no bed.
Yes.
And again, another, another kitschy comedy song.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And just Maude and Jane are just they're just so happy to be together,
so thankful.
Up,
and at that point, Jane was only visiting for 3 days.
Right.
By that point.
Yes.
Because,
and she was making dinner that night.
Jane was making beef stroganoff. That dish is mentioned a lot in Maude. I don't know why.
That was beef stroganoff back in that era, this early 70s. That was a very popular dish.
I don't know why.
It just was.
It just was?
Yeah, it was it was like that and tuna casserole.
And Jell-O. No, Jell-O was the 60s.
Yeah, no, Jell-O was still pretty... It was still
in the 70s, too?
In the 70s.
What was that one with the banana sticking out of the pineapple? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
what was that
I just got this visual image and it just... don't choke.
And it tickled. It tickled you, didn't it? Gutter humor titillates you, doesn't it, Tony?
It's like the Golden Girls, the soda jerk who would arrange the ice cream
in an obscene manner
and the banana in an obscene manner for Rose. It just sort of reminded me of that. There was a lot of sort of kitschy homemaker dishes back then that were very big, like fondue. Became like a big thing around that era. Like they would have these fondue parties.
Yes.
And everybody was buying like these fondue sets.
Yes.
And you'd come over and you'd have a cheese fondue kind of a thing or a chocolate fondue. I love fondue. I have to admit.
Do you like cheese fondue or chocolate fondue?
I like
you don't
both.
Discriminate. Yeah, me too.
There used to, I think it closed. There was a restaurant on 110 that was
the Melting Pot.
Yeah.
I don't think it closed down. I just think it's incredibly expensive.
Oh, is it? Is it still there?
Very expensive. I think it's still there.
So I remember. I think Frank and I went there once years ago. I'm trying to remember, but of course now he can't eat cheese. He's lactose intolerant. But and actually, I remember years and years and years ago there was a fondue place in the city that I went to a number of times, and. It was a French place, and even the waitresses were. I assume they were really French. They all had, French accents.
Yes,
it was just that fondue that they made there, the Swiss cheese fondue.
Christmas candle. That's what they're called.
What is good? Oh, I have never seen that.
You've never seen that?
I have never seen that.
It's literally a...
That is obscene.
That's obscene.
It is... If you're listening to this, Google
it's literally called a Christmas candle.
Christmas... What is it? Christmas Jello? Is that made with Jello?
No, Christmas candle. I'm gonna just double check my sources.
Because, we would never,
No, God
knowingly
forbid.
give untrue information.
Nope, that's what it is. Or a candle salad.
A candle salad.
Yep, candle salad, Christmas candle.
Oh,
That's disgusting.
And the one with the whipped cream?
Uh-huh.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, candle.
No.
It's literally called a Christmas candle or a candle salad.
No.
And it is a banana sticking straight up in a pineapple with a cherry on top and sometimes whipped cream cascading down the sides.
No,
it's quite obscene.
That is not right.
So isn't it nice that we get different beef stroganoff to Christmas candles?
I know, I love it.
There's an old... Oh my God. Should I say it?
Say it.
There's an old joke that my father told me once.
Okay.
And it's the only joke that he ever told me that really made me laugh my ass off. And it was, what do you call a cow that masturbates in the field?
What?
Beef stroganoff.
Beef stroganoff! Oh, that's right.
Isn't that cute?
I know that
That's
joke.
so cute.
I heard that joke.
So disgusting, but so cute. So,
right.
beef stroganoff was on the
Stroganoff
menu
is on the menu.
tonight.
So Carol is setting extra place settings and wants to know why. And Maude, of
Yes.
course,
Carol was
mind her
very-
own business.
Carol was very astute in this episode.
Yes, she was.
I love how they wrote Adrienne Barbeau's character. I
Yes.
really do.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, Carol points out that there's 6 place settings, and Maude, in her own unique way, says, "Oh, it could be a wayward traveler. Someone could possibly." Maude would never invite somebody over for dinner like that.
No.
I don't think Maude would ever do
Oh,
that.
no.
So,
No. And
Maude just basically says, "Mind your own business."
right. And of course, it's brought up about that. She knows Arthur's gonna love it because he gives like 4 stars to Franco-American.
Yes,
spaghetti.
to Franco-American spaghetti.
Did you ever?
No!
Eat that?
I never ate that. I never ate SpaghettiOs. I never ate Chef Boyardee.
I can remember like once or twice as a kid getting that.
Really? I've honest to goodness, never even heard of it.
Yeah, it's nasty. It's nasty.
I mean,
it's like this mushy pasta in a thick tomato soup. Us both.
where we come from Italian
From
homes,
Italian
so
homes.
I never.
It's
If
completely
I didn't-
foreign from anything
The
pasta related
the
to us.
only pasta I ever ate was what my mother made.
Mhm.
So if she made pasta with sauce, if she made shells and sauce, if she made rigatoni, any of the pastas that you can think of,
Right.
that's what I ate. If we
That's
ate SpaghettiOs, it was sacrilege.
We did not. Yeah, eating spaghetti out of a
I
can.
will say this. I remember when I used to go to one of my friends' houses, and his mother made SpaghettiOs, and I remember
Okay.
eating it once, and I was just like, this is disgusting.
Right. Yeah.
This is absolutely heinous.
And then they have the one that it's got like little pieces of Frankfurter in it.
That was another thing. That was another delicacy. It was the Frankenfurter and the mac and cheese with the ketchup.
Yes. And I've even seen where they take it and they make it into like a gelled thing.
Yes,
like
a Jello.
a
Put it in a Jello mold.
Yes.
Use it with gelatin.
Solid. I was like, oh no.
But I mean, they used to do that in the 60s and 70s because of rations. And gelatin was just easy to... the Jello was just easy to make.
I think they just did it because it was just such a fun thing to serve.
I think it was a little bit more than that.
You think so?
I definitely think so.
Don't forget, I was there.
So was I.
No, you were not. No, you were not.
I'm pretty sure that one of the reasons why Jello became so popular was because of rations.
Well, rationing, but that's way before I was even born. In the 60s and 70s, it was just a kitchen kind of
Novelty?
thing. It was novelty, yeah.
That's hideous.
Like, especially like the big thing was the women's magazines, like Good Housekeeping,
Women's
and things
Home
like
Companion.
that. And, especially the women, for the most part, were stay-at-home moms, homemakers.
Yeah.
And that would be like what was advertised in those magazines. And
There's
it was like
a woman on TikTok that makes Minnesota salads that aren't really salads.
Uh-huh.
And, you'll see some fascinating salads that this woman will make.
Right.
They are salads with, Twix in it, and Snickers, and Jello, and whipped cream, and it has to be Cool Whip. It cannot be...
Oh, yes.
Has to be Cool Whip.
Yes.
And just hearing
it won't work with whipped cream.
It will not work with whipped cream.
No.
And it's fascinating. I'm like, all of these desserts and things came out of that era and that time period.
Yeah. Yeah. It did.
I'm so sorry you had to live through that.
Oh, I didn't mind.
Really? You didn't mind the Jell-O?
No. There was always room for Jell-O.
In other news, I completely and totally hate Toni Homeperm. And this episode is over.
No.
Okay.
So now, apparently now, Jane and Arthur are hitting it off because Maude has fixed them up, which I have to say was a surprise because I was surprised Maude would be fixing Arthur up with any of her friends.
I do think that it sort of lends itself to the idea that Maude would play matchmaker, considering B. Arthur originated the role of matchmaker and fiddler.
True.
So I think the writers definitely leaned into that a little bit.
I guess.
I think one of my favorite lines was Maude saying, you can die and not have to leave the house.
Yes. If you're dating the doctor. Well, this all sort of also feeds into, in this episode, Maude very much being a busybody.
Very much a busybody.
Getting in everybody's...
A Badinsky, a meddler, just being involved in everyone's business aside from her own.
Can't leave well enough alone.
Cannot leave well enough alone, unfortunately.
Yes. So now they start looking through the photo album.
They start looking through the photo album, and then they mention... So Jane was like, "Oh, this was our school play.
Right.
I played Martha Washington."
Yes.
And Carol says...
I thought she was Betty Ross.
Betsy Ross, that's who it was, not
Betsy
Martha
Ross.
Washington. And Carol asks, "Who's the good-looking guy?" And there's a pause. B. Arthur looks up and says, "That's me."
That's me.
And obviously, like when she would deliver those lines, she would deepen her voice for that, for the joke. And she said, "Carol, if I can give you any bit of advice, don't be the tallest girl with the deepest voice."
Yes.
And we find out that Maude played Benjamin Franklin and St. Francis of Assisi.
Yes.
Which tickled me.
Yeah.
The only reason it tickled me was because when I was in catechism, I actually had to write an essay about St. Francis of Assisi.
Oh.
I did, because we were like, here, you have to do an essay on a saint.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why do I have to do an essay on a saint? I ended up copying it directly from Wikipedia anyway. Or I just Googled St. Francis of Assisi and I pulled pages and pages of information. I was just like, I'm just going to reorganize all this stuff and hand it right on in.
Please. No critical writing.
It's Catholic school, for goodness sake. They're not going to check the sources.
Control-C, Control-V.
That's right.
Control-C, Control-V. Copy and paste. Okay. So they also see a picture of Jane
and Linda.
With her daughter,
Linda.
Linda. That's when it all starts coming out.
That's when we find out that...
Linda sued Jane.
Linda took Jane to court.
Because when Jane's husband, Linda's father, died...
Passed away.
He had, I guess, left a certain amount of money.
He had left $25,000 to Linda.
To Linda, which Jane was keeping Linda from having because Jane was worried that Linda was...
going to squander
it and spend it on
money.
Gurus
and greasy-haired, I don't want to say gigolos, but it was just giving the money to people that don't deserve the money.
Right. She was just afraid she was going to... And
I mean, we find out that Linda was, like, very of her time. Very, very, like, if I can describe...
Sort of hippie,
very hippy-dippy.
Like, post-Flower Child, but sort of like...
Still modern.
Yeah, modern woman.
Which is funny because Carol's only a few years older than Linda in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. And, like, Carol is very, like, logical, very... whereas Linda's very aloof, very,
flirty, flighty.
Very flirty and flighty.
Yeah.
Very flirty and flighty.
And a very healthy girl.
Yeah. Very healthy.
She was a very healthy girl.
Yeah.
Put it that way. Mm.
So we find out that, yes, Linda takes Jane to court. And Jane is visiting from Chicago.
Yes.
We find out.
Yes. And Maude does that thing about the rhyme about,
Oh, my son's my son till he gets him a wife, but my daughter's my daughter for all of her life. Right. And Jane comes back at that saying, there's also that other rhyme.
Right.
Lizzie Borden took an axe and gave her mother 40 whacks.
Yeah, so that's sort of sums up the...
That sums up the relationship.
the two different
The
mother-daughter
dynamic.
relationships
Yes.
that we're dealing with.
And then we find out as Jane goes back into the kitchen to like, oh no, she doesn't go back to check in the beef stroganoff. She goes upstairs to beat her chin into submission.
Yes, she's got it because she had like a clip in her hair.
She had clips in her hair, and her hair was very, very of the time. Very 70s.
Very 70s socialite.
Oh yeah, very much so. With the barrel curls on the side.
Yes.
But I mean, a very attractive look all the same.
Oh yeah.
And then
that's when Carol figures out that Maude has invited
puts 2 and 2 together.
Linda.
Yep.
Against
against Jane's wishes, basically.
Against Jane's wishes.
And then Maude, I think Maude comes back at her and says, because like Carol says, you lied. Why would you lie? Yeah. Maude says, how dare you say that to St. Francis of Assisi?
Right. And Carol, I think she accuses her of, like, this is one of her most outrageous lies. And Maude says, no, the most outrageous lie was when Carol was a child and she asked her what the belly button was for, and she lied and told her that's where you put salt.
Salt if you want to have celery for dinner.
In bed.
Yes.
Eat celery in bed.
If you want to eat celery for bed, it's a place to keep your salt.
Keep your salt. Yuck.
That's what a belly button's for.
That's when Walter comes in.
Walter enters because they're both arguing.
So he knows he's in the right house.
He actually, yes.
He says that. And Maude tells him that Jane is making dinner. And he's like, well, when's the wedding? Because, Maude is, playing matchmaker. Butting in, so he figured she's probably, and she's like, oh, it's only been, they've only known each other 3 days. And he says, well, you're, already 2 days behind schedule, right?
Yep.
Something to that effect.
Which leads one to believe that this is not the first time that Maude will ever play matchmaker. She plays it over the course of the series.
Well, of course. How could she not?
She's Maude. She can do anything.
Of course. So Jane is coming down.
Jane comes downstairs in a very interesting green getup with a turquoise powdery blue, like a blue scarf situation.
Yeah, it was, and of course that outfit she's wearing, very avocado, olivey green.
Yes.
But those were the colors.
I mean, Maude was in that harvest orange.
That sort of avocado, olivey green.
Yeah.
That was what our kitchen appliances were. The stove, the refrigerator. I know.
Every time I see those colors, I think of Aunt Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think of Aunt Barbara. Mm-hmm. Because she usually sells like those Tupperware things that have that same sort of very 70s colors.
And I remember at the time, my grandmother had like the Harvest Gold refrigerator. It's so funny that appliances came in those colors back then.
Yes.
Because nowadays, almost everything is either stainless steel, black, or white.
Yes.
You really don't see colors in kitchen appliances anymore.
No, you see them in very modern colors like chromes and silvers and you don't see a lot of like funky colors anymore.
No, you can't. I
mean, they're starting to make a comeback. Colored refrigerators, slowly. Like some people like it for the novelty. Some people like it to just dress up their kitchens a little bit.
I know they do sell them where they could be customized. They can put panels on the front because some people I've seen kitchens where they blend in with the cabinet work.
Yeah.
So you don't actually even know the refrigerator is there. Why you would not want to know where the refrigerator is?
I don't know.
They're obviously not Italian.
Because people are idiots.
They're not Italian.
They're not
These
Italian,
people.
it's true.
They're not Italian and they're not Jewish. Oh my goodness. So
Jane comes downstairs.
There's talk about Ava Gardner.
Mirror, mirror, no matter how blue, Ava Gardner is older than you.
Right.
And that was to basically say how, Maude and Jane are of a certain age, and they're commiserating that their youth has fallen.
Right.
So Jane looks in the mirror and says that. Mm-hmm. And then Maude says, I take from Dolores Del Rio.
Yes.
And Carol, of course, being the smart aleck that she is, she asks, who's Dolores Del Rio?
Del Rio.
And Maude shoots back at her saying, it's a river in Mexico. And there's a lot of like quoting from old movies
Yes,
because we
the
find
movies.
out
Yes.
we find out that Arthur is such a movie buff.
A huge movie buff.
And
Yes,
talks
something-
about like different movies that he like, just different quotable movies that he'll mention.
Yes.
Hitherto,
We're finding out about Arthur's
personality.
personality.
We're finding more about him,
we
and that
find
he's not
out-
completely an idiot.
We find out a little, unrevealed minutia about
That he's
Arthur.
actually a very gentle lover.
Mm-hmm.
Stupid, but a gentle lover.
Yes, well, don't know about gentle.
Actually, there is an episode that goes really into detail on that.
Oh, I can't wait for that.
So at that point, Arthur enters with flowers and
Yes.
bros from old movies,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, 11 American beauties, the 12th is you.
Is you.
And he asks Jane, like, oh, what movie was that from? And again, they're playing off of the movie shtick.
Yes.
What are your next notes? Because I immediately...
Well, Jane is showing him that album again.
Yes.
And
then Jane asks, who do I remind you of?
Right.
And who does he say?
I don't remember who he
Jane
said.
Pickens?
Some movie actress.
Jane Pickens from some movie somewhere at some
And then
time.
when Maude
asks, who do I remind you of?
he says...
Charles Lawton, Mutiny on the Bounty, 1962. And I think when was Mutiny on the Bounty?
Oh, I don't know.
But he says Charles Lawton, Mutiny on the Bounty, and then mentions the year that it came out.
That's when Maude shows. She goes, "I have
5 American fingers for you, Walter. One of them is for you.
One of them is for you."
And that was, I want to say, probably one of the longer laughs in the show.
Yeah.
It was a long laugh.
Because everyone, of course, is thinking
that Maude's going to flip him off,
giving him the middle finger. But of course, what she does, I'm assuming to appease the censors, she gives him the thumbs down, which doesn't make sense because the thumb is not a finger. Thumb is a thumb.
A thumb is a thumb.
It's not a finger.
It's a digit. It's a digit.
Yeah,
she could have said 5 American digits. One of them is for you, but that didn't happen.
True. And of course, Maude points out that was what Godzilla said to Wolfman.
Yeah, Godzilla to the Wolfman.
Work it into the movie.
Of course, the movie
theme
the movie
that they were working with.
The movie theme.
So Jane and Arthur go into the kitchen because they've got to finish up the beef stroganoff.
Yeah.
So
he actually says, "I love smelling simmering stroganoff," because of course alliteration.
Yes. Yes.
So at that point, Walter's like, "Wow, like I'm really happy that they're like finding each other. Arthur's a great guy.
Right.
Arthur's doing this, that." And then Maude says, "And not a bad looker when he's wearing his surgical mask."
Right.
And at that point, the doorbell rings.
And
Walter opens the door, and Linda makes what an entrance!
Quite an entrance.
Because
she's wearing a very low-cut dress. And as I've stated before, she was a healthy girl.
She was very stacked.
Yes.
She was very stacked. And she was a very attractive young
very
woman.
pretty.
Very pretty young woman.
Very pretty. And all she does is she immediately tells Walter she needs
I need to be jumped.
And of course...
Do you have jumper cables? My car died. I need to be jumped. And Walter's just agog.
Yeah.
And he's just standing there with his mouth hanging open.
Exactly. Maude is immediately like,
Maude immediately runs over her like, Linda,
she's
it's so good to see you. How have you been? How are you?
Telling everybody that, this is Jane's little girl, and of course,
Walter goes, hi, little girl.
Yeah, it's like, there's nothing quite little about her.
Not at all.
Either personality or...
curves.
Yeah. And,
so Linda turns around and immediately starts flirting with Walter.
Well, yeah.
You have a groovy mustache, Walter.
She loves a black mustache.
I love a black mustache.
and Maude is just pulling away. He's like, it's gray.
His is gray.
And Maude is telling her how Jane is
in the kitchen dying to see her. And then Linda's like, of course, I'll believe that when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
And Maude proceeds to say, oh my God, what does Maude proceed to say?
It was something
she was just telling us about a woman who wanted to bury the hatchet.
Bury the hatchet, yes.
And then she turns away and says 40 times.
40 times, yes. Probably bury the hatchet, probably in the back of their head.
And then that's when we cut to...
now we're in the kitchen.
We're in the kitchen, and Arthur is tasting the stroganoff.
And
And says, maybe add a bit more paprika To which Florida says, "Now I don't know who made the stroganoff. Was it Florida or was it Jane?"
I thought it was Jane.
I thought it was Jane.
They said it was Jane, but I guess Florida was
getting angry. I mean,
maybe Jane was making it, but telling Florida how to make it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's...
And, Florida basically shoots daggers at him saying, I say get out of my kitchen.
Get out of my kitchen.
You want to talk about my cooking? Get out of my kitchen.
Yes. All right. So, I believe at that point, Jane goes out into the living room and, Maude tells her that Linda is here.
Yes. Oh, no, Maude, I think, goes in... No, does Maude go into the kitchen to talk to Jane?
Or does she go into the kitchen?
I think Maude goes into the kitchen to talk to Jane, and then Jane says, wait, Linda's here?
Yes.
And then that's when they exit to the...
Yes.
That's when they exit into the living room.
Yes. And I have something about little
mother.
Little Linda.
Because that's
mother.
I want to say that's probably the first time that they've seen each other in a few years.
They said 10 years, I think.
Yeah, 10 years they haven't seen each other.
Something like that, yeah.
So that means that
Mm-hmm.
Linda abandoned Jane Jane abandoned Linda when she was 16?
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I get the feeling that it was Linda, separated herself from Jane.
Yeah.
And
that sounds about right.
Jane, well, it was sort of... I think it was like a mutual... It felt like it was more of a mutual
It was
thing.
definitely a mutual disdain for each other.
Yeah.
Definitely a mutual disdain for each other.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, you know what? We'll get to that towards the end of the episode. So then they start going on and on because then Linda turns to Arthur and says, Mother, shame on you for keeping away such a handsome doctor. And again, flirting with Arthur.
Right.
And then she ends up saying an incorrect Mae West line.
Oh, it was incorrect?
It's completely and totally, I am an authority on Mae West.
Oh. I don't know why.
So the line that Linda says, because I don't know how Linda found out that Arthur was a movie buff. It's just very bizarre how that happened. But the line that Linda said was something to the effect of, I'm home an awful lot. Mm-hmm. Like, do you make house calls? I'm home an awful lot. Mm-hmm. And Arthur comes back saying, Mae West to Cary Grant, she done him wrong, 1934. Mm-hmm. Jane corrects him and says 1933. That line never happened.
Oh.
That line did not happen. At all.
Oh.
It was her infamous, come up and see me sometime line. Where she turns to Cary Grant and says, that I always love a man in uniform, and that one fits you grand. Mm-hmm. Why don't you come up sometime and see me? I'm home every evening. Mm-hmm. That's the line.
That's the line. It's
not... But it was just one of those things that I'm watching, and I'm like, that's incorrect.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. I mean, I just get steamed when people do that. I mean, it was the same thing with the Wicked Witch of the West. She doesn't say, fly, my pretties, fly. Mm-hmm. She's just standing there at her balcony saying, fly, fly, fly.
Right. But it's funny how what the line actually is in a movie and what people misremember
it. Yeah.
There's actually, that's a phenomenon. I forget what that's called. Is it the Mandela effect?
Mandela effect. It was the same thing with whatchamacallit, Darth Vader. Mm-hmm. I don't think Darth Vader ever said, Luke, I am your father. He says, no, I'm your father. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there was no Luke involved in that.
Right.
And that was what caused Luke Skywalker to just lose his shit.
Yes.
Yes.
But there's a whole... If you look up the Mandela effect on Google, there's this whole it's sort of one of those conspiracy theory ideas.
Berenstain Bears.
That people misremembering Nelson Mandela dying years before he actually did. It's a weird
It's
thing.
So bizarre.
It's so bizarre. It's very bizarre. It's this whole concept, and it's interesting if you look it up on Google. It's
research on the Google. Research on the Google.
Yes, I mean we don't need any other information. Google is all.
Google knows everything.
Google knows everything.
Google even knows my social security number.
Yes. So Linda is flirting with Arthur.
Linda is flirting
big time.
Heavily with Arthur.
And I was asking Artie if he has jumper cables.
I was honestly expecting for there to be an audience laugh, and there was not an audience laugh.
Yeah.
There were a couple of times when I was listening, and I'm like, shouldn't there be an audience laugh track somewhere in there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if it was a laugh track or it was just silenced for the audience. I don't know. I don't know either.
No.
So Arthur ends up leaving with Linda to go and give her car a jump.
Yes, he says he has battery cables.
In his garage.
Yes.
And they go to leave. So Linda and Artie leave. And Jane turns to Maude and goes, "Where do you keep your razor blades?"
Yeah, it was like... I mean...
Like 3 days. Like, I'm assuming that Arthur and Jane were, like, enjoying each other's company, and there was really something potentially happening there, and then Linda comes in and just ruins everything.
Yeah. And Arthur, I mean, he's been, like, all over Jane for the past 3 days, and now, like, you know, her daughter comes in, and, you know, she's being flirty, and Arthur is just like, okay,
bye.
Bye. And
Toodles.
I'm gonna give her... and why did she didn't need the car to be jumped then. They could have, they were supposed to be having dinner. It could have been like, you know, well...
Again, flighty.
Yeah.
Very flighty.
Yeah.
And then, as a matter of fact, before they leave, Jane says, "Arthur, what about the beef stroganoff? Like, there's food. There's dinner. Come and eat."
Yes.
And I forget what Arthur said, but the two of them...
I think he said, just add a little more paprika.
Just add a little more paprika, and then they left.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would be very hurt.
Oh, yeah.
I would be incredibly hurt if the guy that I was seeing ever did that.
Of course.
That would ruin it.
Oh, yeah.
That would absolutely ruin it.
That would be a deal breaker.
That would be very quickly a deal breaker.
We're not talking red flag.
No.
We're talking deal breaker.
We're talking caution tape.
That's like, don't bother to come back for the beef stroganoff.
That's right.
You will not get.
You will not get the beef stroganoff.
No beef stroganoff for you.
You don't get any beef stroganoff.
You don't get beef stroganoff. See, we're misremembering the Golden Girls line.
You don't get any lemonade.
Yes. And of course, when they bring up what movie this is reminding them of, Walter,
James Mason to Lolita.
Yes.
James Mason, Lolita, 1962.
Exactly, Lolita.
So that's where we cut to commercial.
You know, speaking of Lolita, it's funny. I have to bring up current events.
Go ahead.
Because, you know, R. Kelly being found guilty.
Guilty on all counts.
Yeah, all these counts.
All counts of sex trafficking.
And it's unbelievable how he was getting away with what he was getting away with for years.
Oh, he'll get his in prison.
He'll
get his in prison.
I believe he can try.
I hate you so much.
But he married Aaliyah, which is only 15.
Which is only 15.
Why did her parents allow this to happen?
There was a post. There was a post that I had read, just basically detailing the amount of men.
I read that one.
That have done that.
Yeah, Prince, Elvis, Jerry Lee Lewis. Who were some?
There was another rocker. There was another
Chuck Berry.
Chuck Berry was another one. Yeah.
I mean, all these very famous, powerful older men
marrying and betrothing these young girls,
and sometimes not even marrying. They were just
sleeping with them.
Yeah.
I hate men.
I know.
I do.
Men are pigs.
Men are pigs.
Thank God.
You need to stop that. Disgusting.
But it's like, I don't know. I never.
It's very upsetting. It's really upsetting.
I never understood that. I mean, it's beyond cringy. Beyond cringy. I mean, it's like heading into like
it's statutory rape.
Pedophilia and
it's statutory rape. It's pedophilia, and what was I watching? Oh my God Almighty! Oh, we are going to go on a tangent, friends.
That's all right.
I have such a problem with people who are into certain kinks.
Okay.
And I am not one to kink shame people.
Okay.
I am never one to kink shame people.
I mean, what goes on between consenting adults
is what goes on between consenting adults. But there is something so disturbing about the daddy, little girl, little boy situation. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I don't know about this.
So, with certain types of... First, let me start by saying Hollywood has an obsession with little girls.
Oh, yeah.
Hollywood has a definite obsession with little girls. And I actually wrote a post about this.
And sexualizing them.
Very much sexualizing them. There was a Ginger Rogers movie called The Major and the Minor.
Mm-hmm.
And that pretty much solidifies how I feel about these sort of, like, daddy girl boy relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Because The Major and the Minor basically has it where Ginger Rogers plays this unassuming woman who meets this really attractive, I forget who the hell played the lead character. I don't know if it was it wasn't Charles Lawton. It was oh God Almighty! But look
go on
the
describing
Google.
the movie.
I'll go on with describing the movie. So she meets this very attractive older gentleman, and she wants to familiarize herself with him. She just finds him attractive, and she's like, oh no, I'm sorry. She has to pay a certain amount of money to go someplace. So she ends up disguising herself as a little girl. And Ginger Rogers is a very beautiful, beautiful woman. So
the Major was Ray Milland.
Ray Milland, that was who it was.
That's who was the Major.
It was Ray Milland. And if you can read the description.
Ginger Rogers, she's playing Susan Applegate. She decides to leave New York City, take a train back to Iowa, but she has only enough money for a child's ticket. She disguises herself as a young girl. After being discovered by the train conductor, hides out in the car of Major Kirby. Major Kirby believes she's a child and watches after her. But as Kirby's fiancée, played by Rita Johnson, and others grow suspicious of Susan's ruse, her cleverness is thoroughly tested.
Yeah.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, it's a little cringeworthy.
And let me guess, at the end, she winds up with Ray Milland.
That's right.
Who has, up to this point, thought she was
a child. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Honestly, at one point, it was my favorite movie. I really enjoyed watching it, especially because one of my favorite Ginger Rogers lines towards the end of it was, we find out that Ray Milland's wife, played by Rita Johnson, finds out.
That's his fiance.
That's his fiance. Finds out that Ginger Rogers, that Susan is
an adult.
And one of my favorite lines in the movie is Ginger Rogers turning to her and says, "You should be very glad I'm not 12. I was a very straightforward child. I used to spit." And honestly, one of my favorite lines. Like, that's brilliant. I love the writing, but it is such a cringy movie.
Wow.
Because, and I'm trying to remember if there was another movie that had a similar premise, where the lead actress would play a younger girl, and then by the end of it, we would find out that, she's not really a young girl, she's an adult woman. Yeah. So I have a very strong opinion about the sexualization of younger people.
Right.
And it's just, it bothers me, because it's just bothersome. Yeah. And I mean, how do you feel about May-December relationships?
I mean, I'm not opposed to them because I mean, like, my husband is 13 years older than me.
But you and he started dating when?
I was in my 30s. Okay. I mean, it wasn't like, I was
It wasn't like you were a teenager
or by any means. I mean, we're
both
I mature adults, even though
the big problem that I'm seeing is that these 20-somethings, these 30-somethings, are grooming these teenagers.
Yeah, that is like... Ooh.
And it's so hideous.
That is icky.
And it happens a lot more often than you think it does.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So...
It's terrible.
So, yeah. So, moving gaily forward.
So we have the break, and I believe Maude and Florida...
Maude and Florida are talking because Maude's lamenting.
Yes,
Maude's lamenting.
Maude's hiding Jane's coat.
Her mink coat.
So she can't return to Chicago.
So...
And she's...
it's also important to remember here that at the beginning, everyone was commenting how cold it was outside.
Yes.
And then when they left... Like, Arthur was like, it's like springtime outside.
Springtime, yeah.
Which means that he was obviously a little turned on by Linda.
Exactly. His temperature was rising. So, Maude is describing to Florida, Carol thinks she's a meddler because Linda and Arthur ran off together.
Yep.
We find out that Arthur never came back for dinner.
Yep.
And it's that point...
Maude says I should be sponsored by Procter & Gamble.
Right. And Carol runs in panicked.
Yes. Well, the reason why is because after all is said and done, like Florida, I think, says, I wish it was, I could turn it off. Which means she obviously wants Maude to shut up.
Of course.
So Maude lies to Carol, Walter, and
She
Arthur.
lies to everybody.
She lies to everybody.
Except the UPS.
Except the
But
UPS man, but we'll get to him in a moment.
Yes. Yes. So first, Carol runs in.
First, Carol
yes.
races into the house, races up the stairs, and we find out that Maude lied to Carol, saying,
Right.
"You said, like Carol says, you told me you drank a bottle of shampoo and were writhing on the floor."
Right.
To which Maude says,
she ran home from the office.
Ran home from the office, just booked it to the house.
Yes.
Because Maude, I think, was saying, like, how come when you tell people that there's a crisis, nobody's around?
Right.
Or something to that effect. And then Maude says, it wasn't shampoo, it was actually just cream soda. And it was gas. The pain I was feeling was gas.
A little gas.
So Carol is immediately, like, really upset.
Yeah, of course. You know, because she ran out of work like a,
Bat out of hell.
Bat out of hell because she thought her mother was home.
Writhing in pain on the floor.
Having poisoned herself.
And then Walter races in.
He runs in, same thing,
panic-stricken, very distraught. And
Maude told him that the basement had
flooded. But Carol initially said, don't worry, it's only cream soda.
Because she thought
that she told the same lie to everybody.
Right.
Carol
but she changed it for each
person.
So Walter is like thinking that
Walter thinks the basement's flooded
with cream soda.
And that's the only time we hear of a basement.
Yes.
The only time we hear of a basement.
Right. So she's like, you're both here. Jane needs help. She doesn't want Jane leaving.
She doesn't want Jane leaving.
Feeling like this.
She's not. We find out that she's not even looking.
She
at
won't
Maude.
even look at
Maude.
She's like she's so angry at Maude.
Yep.
For inviting her daughter, over, and
her daughter to then subsequently take Arthur home.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're all led to believe. We're all led to believe that Arthur and Linda.
That's what it appears to be.
That's what it appears to be.
That's what it appears to be. So, I have something about Maude calling. Was it Maude called Jane the pain in the neck, or there was something about
no? So Jane comes downstairs and just very distraught, very somber, very melancholy. And
she wants her coat.
She wants her coat. So Jane is just turned away from Jane is turned away from Maude, and I think Walter was the one that said, "What's the matter, Jane? Pain in the neck?"
And she's like,
and Jane says, "Yes, and you're married to it."
And you're married to it. That's what it was. And of course, she will not look at Maude. And Maude admits that
900,000 people in China that don't look at you and they get by.
Yes.
That's what Jane said to Maude.
Yes.
And
Maude tells her I think it's only like
two or three dozen at most
are okay with it, right? There's something to that effect.
So Maude ends up saying, "All right, Jane, fine. If you won't look at me, then I won't look at you."
Right.
And of course, Maude is looking directly at Jane as Jane turns around, and then Maude says, "And I lied again."
She lied again. She was.
So Jane finally relents and says, "Damn, Maude, why are you meddling? Why are you doing this?" Mm-hmm. And Walter quips saying, "Funny how everyone gets to that point about Maude meddling."
Yes.
And she goes, "Where's my mink coat?" Maude says, "I hid it." Jane says, "Fine, I'm going
She's
to
gonna leave without it."
And Maude says, "Nobody goes to Chicago without a mink coat."
Without a mink coat. I mean, I always wear
a mink coat when I go to Chicago.
My foam mink.
The foam mink?
Yes. I don't have real mink. Foam mink. Yeah. Now that's when Arthur runs in.
Yeah, that's when Arthur runs in and then
panic-stricken,
saying, "Maude, you called and said you had a broken leg."
And
then Maude says, "I did, but it went away. Yes. I took 3 Midol."
Yes, and she actually referred to him as Mr. Last Tango in Paris.
Mr. Last Tango in Paris.
To continue our movie
mentionings.
Themes.
So
Maude is cornering Arthur, and she's like winking her eye, and she's telling him, tell Jane what happened, and she's making up this this story
about him slipping and falling on the ice outside, and
Right.
him taking a hot tub and going to bed,
Mhm.
and she's like trying to like winking
she's
and like tell the lie, just
like-
believe the lie that I'm telling.
She's like, I'm feeding you this lie so you can tell this to Jane so that she's not mad at you. Which actually was not a fair thing for Maude to do.
Not at
I mean,
all.
if Arthur was a total shit to Jane, she should just be calling Arthur out. Jane's her best
well, I
friend.
think that you know what the big problem is at that point. Maude just wants to save face.
I know.
Maude
Yeah.
wants to save face.
Well, she's trying to smooth things over for everybody.
Maude's trying to do a good deed.
She's trying to do a good deed, and she's meddling.
So Arthur then says, Maude, you really should have that eye checked out.
Right.
Just completely
Yes.
and totally decimating the story.
Yes, he doesn't get it.
And he goes on to talk to Jane, saying, you got quite a little girl there.
Yes.
Like mentioning the pillows and the burning incense.
What happened was
hundreds
he
of cats.
drove Linda home to, or as she calls it, her
Her
pad.
pad.
And they had drinks.
Yes, and they had
And
wine.
then he's
They had
describing
vino.
the pillows and the cats.
And Jane is under the impression that they ended up sleeping together.
Right.
And she is distraught. Like,
Right.
Maude, how much more are you going to be putting me through? Why are you doing this to me?
And I believe at this point, Jane wants her coat. She just wants to leave.
Yep.
And Arthur and Walter and Carol are all fighting
Yep.
when the doorbell
rings.
And of course we're assuming
it's Linda.
it's Linda now.
And then Maude is, of course, grandstanding, saying, the person behind this door is going to be the solution to all of our problems. She opens the door saying, will you come in, please? And it's United Parcel.
United Parcel.
And he actually says, United Parcel. And Maude just immediately grabs the package and slams the door saying, why don't you mind your own business?
Mind your own business.
Which is hysterical because
yes.
that's exactly what Maude is not doing.
Yes. And I believe Jane, during some of this, she had grabbed the phone to call a cab. Because
did she grab the phone?
I think so. I'm not sure. Well,
I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I know
because I think after that the phone rings.
Some point after that, the phone
rings.
But Jane says she's leaving and she's going to go outside and wait for the cab.
She's going to wait for the cab.
That's when the doorbell rings again.
Yep.
And now this time it really is Linda.
And Linda just races in and grabs her mother and hugs her so tightly.
Yes. Because the lie Maude told to Linda was that Jane is giving Linda her money. And that's why she's hugging Jane.
That's right.
She's happy now because she thinks
like
Jane is giving her money.
I just love that bit of dialogue between the two of them. Linda, what are you doing? I'm hugging you, Mother. Why? Maude told me you're going to give me the money.
Yeah.
And then Jane just turns to her and says, I have news for you, little one. Maude lied.
Maude lied again.
And Jane just grimaces and exclaims, like, ugh, why? Why?
Now they're all arguing. They're all fighting. So Maude, she starts addressing all of them. Actually, she does a Walter sit.
Yes, she actually says that.
She does the sitting.
So while Maude is trying to reason with everyone, and then Walter's like going on and on and on and on and on about like how he's not at the store, how he needs to be at the store right now.
Right.
And that's when Maude like exclaims, like screams, Walter, sit.
Yes.
And then after that, like Maude is again trying to reason with everybody, and then Walter comes out saying, "We're having a Tupperware party."
And that's when she
exclaims, God'll get you for that, Walter.
Yes.
So, again, Maude is, like, trying to reason with everyone, like, saying, like, is there a crime against wanting to help a mother and a daughter reconnect? And she's saying how she was trying to get Jane and Arthur together.
Right.
And she
trying
asks,
to reunite Jane
and her daughter.
She's asking, like, is that a crime?
If anyone thinks this is a crime, raise their hand.
Raise your hand.
And everyone raises their hand.
Raise their hand.
Including us. We all raise our hand.
And Maude is like, she just wants one person to say something nice.
And then she ends up turning to Linda. And the Bible says, and a little child shall lead.
Oh, jeez.
And Linda immediately starts saying, M is for the money Mommy owes me.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Maude is bereft with anger, and she's just like, "Stop! What? Like, what are you doing? Your mother loves you."
Mm-hmm.
And
Linda comments to Carol that she wishes, she had a daughter like Carol, and Carol tells her, I don't think so, because if I were your daughter,
Carol sides with Linda.
Yeah, I would be hiring a lawyer.
That's right.
To get my money. And she's like, she's 26 years old.
I mean,
she's a grown woman.
There was a show that I watched. It was called The Kaminsky Method. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It's on Netflix. It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
It stars Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and I want to say a couple of other people whose names escape me. And the Michael Douglas's character's best friend dies, and makes Michael Douglas the executor to his will. And Michael Douglas's best friend had a clause basically saying, "You are in charge of all of this money." And the friend had a substantial amount of money.
Okay.
And the character's children are like pleading with Michael Douglas to like, "We're going to use this money for a charity. We're going to use it," and they're just using it for their selfish needs. So I'm understanding where Jane is coming from. However, it would need to be stipulated in the will what can be done with that money. So if Jane's husband explicitly said, Linda can get this money if she does X, Y, and Z, that's one thing.
Right.
But if there's no explanation, Jane is withholding money from Linda.
Right.
So it really depends on what was stipulated in the will.
And it's at that point that now the phone rings.
Yes.
Which is a very interesting call, as we find out.
Yes.
And
it initially is like, Maude can't talk on the phone, like, I can't talk right now, let me talk to you later.
Right.
And then she sets the phone down on the counter.
And that's when we get into about Linda and Arthur, and now Linda finds out that they all think that, she took Arthur home and did the deed with him, and she's like incredulous at this. She's like, me interested in Arthur? And she's like,
Dr. Doolittle over there?
Yeah, Dr. Doolittle. And she's like, Carol, can you imagine me being interested in this middle-aged guy?
Yeah.
She said he came over, he had one glass of wine, and he
threw up on her cat. Threw up on her cat.
And Arthur is like, you didn't have to tell everybody that. He's insulted. And
so he says, I don't think there's a place for me here. And then Maude says, I don't think there's a place for you, period.
Period, yes. So he leaves.
He actually said a very funny line, as a matter of fact. Do you know a patient could be dying without my help?
That's right. Absolutely.
So he just pauses and says, wait, you know what I mean, and then leaves.
Yes.
Carol leaves to go upstairs. She says,
upstairs.
I'm going to drink a bottle of shampoo.
Going to drink shampoo. Walter is leaving for the liquor store.
Yes, he says, I need to go to the liquor store. I need strength.
Yes. She's leaving because her cab is there.
Yep.
Linda
races to get out the door
before
first.
Her. And I think they have a goodbye, but it's not.
They have a goodbye, and basically Linda says, "Don't worry if you have to call. Don't worry about calling. Just send money.
Just send money." Yeah.
And so Linda leaves, and then Jane turns to Maude and says, "Maude, I understand that a mother and daughter have to love each other, but it says nothing." I think she mentions the Bible. She says it says nothing about them living in separate states.
Right.
So they are obviously going to be separated, which leads me to believe that Linda lives in New York and Jane lives in Chicago.
Yes, because Maude was saying how she couldn't believe that Jane would come out from Chicago here to New York and that she wouldn't be seeing her daughter. So obviously Linda lives near to, well, it has to be close to Maude because Arthur, drove her home, and so it couldn't have been, it's only a car ride home. So, it's navigable by vehicle. That's your 5-star letter word of the day.
That's the SAT
navigable.
Word of the day. Navigable.
All right. So Maude, she was calling after Jane, but Jane just was over it. She just leaves.
She just left.
So Maude,
what a way to end a friendship, man.
Yeah, I know.
Like, what a way to do that.
Yes. So Maude gets back on the phone.
The phone.
She's talking on the phone, basically listening.
Yep.
And that's when Carol comes back down to apologize.
Because Carol, and I mean, I would too, like, I would understand why my mother would want to try to help. Like, put your best foot forward. Right. Don't just leave things on good terms between everybody and make nice with everybody.
Never burn your bridges, pussycat.
I promise nothing.
So they kiss and make up.
Carol goes back upstairs.
And Maude continues on the phone. And starts
screaming at the person on the other end.
Yes.
And she says, would you stop bugging me?
Yeah.
Goodbye, mother.
Yes, we find out.
We find out that she was yelling at
her own mother. So, therefore, Maude's relationship with her own mother...
Again, it was one of those things where I'm like, we don't actually meet Maude's mother until, I think, season 3. Mm-hmm. And, the way that Maude describes her mother, my dream cast for Maude's mother, my fan cast for Maude's mother, would have been Agnes Moorehead.
Oh, really?
I would have loved to have seen Agnes Moorehead play Maude's mother. Because Agnes, I mean, I don't know if they would have put stilts on her or anything to make her so tall, but, I mean, Agnes Moorehead was still
her other sitcom mother was petite.
That's very true. Very true indeed.
And I know this for a fact. I've walked in her shoes. Literally.
So it's
very sensible low-heeled pop.
Very sensible low-heeled pop. So it's just very interesting.
So now we get to the epilogue, of course.
So now there's the epilogue.
We're in the kitchen.
And Carol is, I think, drinking coffee with Maude.
They're at the table.
She says, I can't believe you. You still think that there's a chance that Jane and Linda will make up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then Maude is, very philosophical, saying, the connection between a mother and daughter, there's still that
the umbilical cord.
There's still they're attached with an unseen umbilical cord, which makes it difficult going through revolving doors.
Yes,
and that's how the episode.
And that's
very
ends.
Philosophical. Very philosophical.
Whew, this episode was a workout.
I mean, not for anything, but I mentioned this to you before we started recording.
Yeah.
When they have these big ensemble casts. With multiple guest stars, there's a lot more information that they pack into these episodes.
Yes.
So,
because we've commented that some episodes have seemed shorter,
much shorter,
even though the time is the same. Than other episodes. This felt like a longer episode.
Felt like a much longer episode. Because
episode.
there's a lot more dialogue that they have to pack into.
There's a lot more territory to cover on this one.
It's almost like. Are you familiar with the play My Girl Friday?
No.
Okay. My Girl Friday was with Roz Russell and I think either Gregory Peck or Cary Grant. I think it was Cary Grant.
I think they were the same person for a short time.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, they're both, classical,
there was
handsome beauties.
Parthenogenesis, and they divided.
Yes.
And became two separate individuals.
Yes, that makes sense to me. So that play initially was 3 hours.
Oh, wow.
It is initially a 3-hour play.
That's a long play.
If you play it...
I hope there were pee breaks.
No. No.
I'd never make it.
There was no such thing as pee breaks in the 50s. What are you talking about? So, the way that the director... I don't know if it was George Cukor or... there was just... I'm trying to think of the director of My Girl Friday. And... the way the play was initially written was every bit of dialogue was spoken at each line was said appropriately. In the movie, the director was like, we need to make this a shorter film. So we're translating from the stage to the screen. And because of that, they had it where each actor would cut off the lines.
Okay.
So, the line would be read, but, right before the line ended, the other actor would come in. And it ended up shaving off about an hour of the movie. Okay. An hour of the play.
The director of the movie was Howard Hawks.
And
it was Rosalind Russell and Cary Grant.
It was Cary Grant.
Cary Grant.
See, I know my stuff sometimes.
You know your caca.
I do. I know my potpourri.
You know your potpourri.
But yeah, that's a lot of movies mentioned.
Oh my goodness! Yes, and we mentioned even more.
I mean, But we thank you for listening for another episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter. If you would like to follow us, you can on Facebook at God'll Get You for That, Walter, on Instagram at Findley's Friendly Appliances, on YouTube at Findley's Friendly Appliances.
Nope.
On YouTube at God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Yep.
One day I'll get it right.
However, the email is...
The email is Findley's Friendly Appliances at gmail.com.
Yes.
And we always accept commentary. We always accept people who will write to us and comment with us. We are at episode 22.
Number 22.
Number 22.
For crying out loud.
For Christmas' sake. We're almost at the end of season 1. We're almost at the end of season 1. I forget if it was 24 episodes or 23 episodes.
We'll find out.
We'll find out. We'll do our research, as we always do.
And where can they follow Tomcat?
You can follow me at That Tomcat on all forms of social media. Just type in That Tomcat and make sure there's an extra T at the end of that cat.
Yes.
And if you would like to follow Miss Toni with an I, where can they find you?
Of course on Facebook, Toni Homeperm. And there's always my website, ToniHomeperm.com. Don't get us demonetized, please. We haven't even been monetized yet.
We haven't even been monetized.
You're demonetizing us.
Oh my goodness gracious. So we thank you again for listening, and we will see you on another wonderful episode of God'll Get You for That, Walter.
Good night.